Hello, everybody, and thank you very much for joining our webinar today. And thank you very, very much for Savills for agreeing to participate and let us know a lot more about their industry and their business and what they do day to day. We have here Bryony Staller, and Bryony is Associate Director of Planning, and she's involved in the graduate recruitment scheme. We have Matt Salter, who is a valuation director and also came up through the scheme. We have Adam Stride, who is at the moment doing a degree apprenticeship with Savills, and we also have Hebe Williams, who is part of the graduate recruitment program, and she's a graduate recruitment officer. So I'm going to be asking them all a number of questions over the next hour, that I should really hopefully be asking questions that you as listeners would be wanting to hear, so we can find out more about careers in real estate and surveying in general, and also how they got in, and they should give you some tips and pointers of how you can get ahead in careers in this industry. So I'm going to start with Bryony, and I'm going to say, tell us what you do exactly and what your role is.
So my job title is Associate Director, but I'm a planning consultant. And the role of a planning consultant is to manage development sites and planning applications through the town and country planning system. So what that means on a day-to-day basis is that I advise landowners and developers on planning matters that will help them achieve planning consent to develop a site. So whether that be a residential development or perhaps a retail development, anything that requires planning consent to be delivered, we advise on that. So that essentially is the role that I do on a day-to-day basis.
How did you come to get that role? How did you train to become a planning officer? Was it from a university, or did you then come into Savills and train, or how did you come to be where you are today?
So I actually knew that I wanted to be a planner from a very early age. Geography was always my favourite subject in school, and human geography in particular. And when I was doing my A-levels, I focused on urban regeneration as one of my modules. So that sparked my interest, and I went to university and did an undergraduate degree in planning. So I sort of hit the ground running with it. I then left university and got a graduate position at Southampton City Council. The council funded me to carry out my master's whilst I was working there 4 days a week, doing my master's 1 day a week, and I trained as a planner there. I then stayed at Southampton City Council for 8 years, progressing up to senior planner before joining Savills in 2012 as a senior planner.
Okay, that's really interesting. And Matt, what about you? What do you do within Savills, and also tell us a bit about how you came to get to where you are today.
Afternoon all. So I mean, my role is so I'm a director in the portfolio valuation team. So basically what we do is we provide regular accounts valuations for institutional funds, property companies and family trusts. So we will value their portfolios, which are multi-sector, and provide values on a monthly, quarterly, biannual and annual basis. We've got about 67 mandates at the moment, and with the makeup of the funds, geographically it's across the UK. So we work alongside our regional colleagues to provide these for accounts purposes. So that's my sort of day to day.
How did you get into that role? How did you kind of fall into that role? What led you there?
So I suppose slightly different to Brian in mine. I sort of fell into property. I was doing a business degree at Cardiff. I had some work experience with a sort of family friend who was a partner in a property auctions company in Birmingham. Following sort of 8 weeks with them, I decided that property was a career I wanted to go into. I just enjoyed, I suppose, the buzz, the variety of the work. And from there, just sort of decided, how do I get into property? I then went on to do a master's after my undergrad at University of West of England. And post that, I did a month placement with Savills. Obviously, I was applying for jobs at possibly the worst time in the market, 2008, 2009. But Savills, I suppose, where they were slightly different to other companies, only took on a small number of graduates in 2009. And then at the start of 2010, they took on people on 4-month work placements with a view to permanent jobs. So fortunately, I was I was one of those, and yeah, I've been at Savills ever since.
And so you, but both you and Bryony obviously did degrees and came in postdoc degrees. But Adam and Hebe. This is slightly different for both of you. So Adam, explain how you've got into Savills and what you do.
Yeah, hi everyone. So basically, I'll just give you a rundown of what I do. So I'm an apprentice building surveyor working within the Southampton project and building consultancy team. So my job role sort of split down the middle through consultancy and then projects. So first of all, consultancy would be working with a number of different clients in different sectors. They'll come to us with a proposition of a building that they would like to sell or buy, and they would bring us in to offer opinion on the condition of the building, what potentially might need to be done to upgrade the building to either buy or sell, dilapidations as well, and development monitoring on sort of a legal side. Projects wise, so we get involved right from the beginning as a designer. So we do a bit of an architectural role as well, and that brings me into working with CAD, which is a software that you use to develop plans and elevations. We then write a specification of works, which is basically a fancy instruction manual for a builder. They then take that and deliver the project as we've designed it. So yeah, so next question was, how do I came to Savills? Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So I came from, it's slightly unique. I came from 4 years of actually working on site. So I worked with my family business. In my family, a fourth generation of bricklayer. So I did that for 4 years, developed a sound understanding of how the construction industry works, how to build a house first and foremost. And then I decided to change for various reasons. I might explain that later. But at that point, I decided to apply for a degree apprenticeship. And it just so happened that Savills were looking for one at the time. So yeah, that was my route in. And I'm third year into my apprenticeship now. So that means that I'm third year into my degree, and I've got another 2 years, and then I will graduate and then become hopefully a chartered surveyor as well, with all things considered.
That's brilliant. That's really great. And it's great to have, some background first and understanding and know what you want to do to be able to then understand how you can get into it and do a degree, an apprenticeship on the degree on the job. That's amazing. And Hebe, what about you? What's your role in Savills and how did you come to that?
Yeah, so slightly different to the other three, because they're all on sort of the fee earning side of the business. And then I'm on the operations side. So my role is a graduate recruitment officer. So basically look to recruit all of the graduates into the business, and also helping on the apprenticeship side as well. So for example, Matt and Bryony support from a fee earning point of view in helping us hire the graduates. And I came into the role sort of through a slightly different route as well. So I left school and I actually went to a business course, which was about 6 months before going straight into work. And I started off as a lettings negotiator in a really small boutique agency. And I did that for about a year. And then I realised I probably couldn't really progress within that business, just because it was a really small team. So then I heard about this role at Savills and went for an interview, and that was kind of it. So I started as the team admin in my team now, and then I moved to a graduate recruitment assistant, and then I moved to this role sort of last year. So yeah.
Great, brilliant. I'm just going to ask a bit about how people's roles fit in, because obviously Savills does so many different things within the idea of real estate and property, commercial and residential. So it'd be really interesting, Bryony, if you could tell me a bit about, say, within your in Southampton or in your branch or company, where you fit in and what other areas people are working in.
Yeah, so I work in the Southampton planning team, and we are a multidisciplinary office. Adam also works in the Southampton office in the building consultancy team. So we have a number of Savills disciplines in the office: planning, development, building consultancy, licensed leisure, and new homes residential sales as well. So planning within the office sit in the respect of the fact that we can assist each other on projects. We can advise on perhaps some planning elements that might relate to work that Adam's doing in his building consultancy role, but also we work very closely with the development team in relation to their selling of land for the purposes of development, advising them on any planning related matters that may be relevant to their considerations when they're advising their clients. The planning team itself in Southampton is 15 strong, and we cover a broad sections of the planning industry. So we mainly focus on residential development and have done for quite some time, and we have a number of strategic residential sites that we are assisting on at the moment. Two in particular that I work on are large scale developments along the south coast, both delivering around 2,500 homes each. And our team gained the planning consent, and we also help see through the delivery of those homes, so discharge of conditions and technical matters relating to planning requirements for the build out of that development. But also in our team we have what's known as EIA, environmental impact assessment specialists, and that environmental impact assessments are a technical planning requirement that are relevant to some large scale developments, and there's certain criteria that means that they need to be applied and considered when submitting a planning application, and we have specialists within our team that do that. We also have the urban design team within the Southampton Planning Office, and you can probably gather by its name they do a lot of the design work relating to master plan work and large scale developments, perhaps some city centre regeneration, perhaps some football stadiums. You know, they get involved in all sorts of very interesting projects across the whole of the country. And importantly, in the planning team, we don't just sit in our own silo. We don't just work in Southampton, we work across our patch, as we call it, so across Hampshire and the south. We have other planning teams within Savills that are located within Wimborne, Guildford and Sevenoaks, which are close to us, and we work with them on projects as well, and we will also speak with them directly and, you know, keep communication up and share knowledge, etc. So we are a planning team in Southampton, but we are also a planning team across the board within the southeast and nationally. I suppose we have lots of offices nationally too, so you know there is such a lot that happens in Savills, so it's quite hard to summarize it, I suppose, but hopefully that gives a bit of a feel about how planning does sit within the local area that we work in.
And you obviously went to university and studied planning because you enjoyed it through your A levels and you like geography and things. How many people do you think do it as a university degree, or do you find that some people come to it after university, or would they maybe come to Savills and do something else and then think, well, actually I'd like to do planning and then learn it on the job?
So I would say very few do it as an undergrad degree. It's definitely the majority of people that get into planning have done a geography degree or similar at undergrad level. It tends to be that people then realise that planning is perhaps a career opportunity once they've finished their undergraduate degree and look for the graduate recruitment opportunities, or carry out a master's before looking for those graduate recruitment opportunities. We do have graduates that are undertaking a master's whilst they're with us at Savills, but a lot of our graduates do apply once they have gained a planning degree or a similar relevant degree that allows them to be a planner. And when I say be a planner, I mean in relation to the need to be able to achieve your RTPI accreditation. So they need to have been on a RTPI accredited course or be able to seek that accreditation via one of the other routes that is possible. I don't actually know of anyone within my team who has worked in another area of Savills and then crossed over to planning. There may, thinking it through, I think the link would probably be if somebody started working in the development team and then perhaps had more of an interest in pure planning rather than the planning elements that relate to the development team, and then they may cross over that way. But generally the planners do join us as planners.
And so obviously you and Adam work in the same place, and Adam, you do building and project consultancy, which you explained. Could you explain the other areas that may be within your organisation in Southampton? So what other areas? We've got the building and project consultancy, we said about the planning. What other areas are there?
Yeah, so I mean, so we do a fair amount of crossover with the licensed leisure team, and also a little bit with development as well. And so they're known as transactional teams. So basically, that's where an asset is being sold or bought on behalf of the client, and our teams act as agents. So in that process, we might jump in and offer advice on what the building is currently like, what the condition is, what kind of works might need to be done. Also on the dilapidation side as well. So if there's a landlord who owns a building and they look to change their tenants, we might go in and tell the tenant what sort of works they need to do to reinstate it to previous condition. So yeah, there's a fair bit of crossover there. As a team, as a builder consultancy team, we sit about 200 surveyors and a few apprentices and graduates as well. There's so I get involved obviously on a wider scale with the whole division, as well as sort of 50 apprentices. I periodically meet up with them, which is actually really fun, you know, getting involved with different apprentices from my division and other divisions, bouncing ideas off them. Same with the graduates as well. So yeah, no, it's quite varied what we get involved with and the amount of people that we get to talk to on a daily basis.
So when we look at like Adam and Bryony, you very much obviously looking at new developments that are coming up or changing developments, getting planning for developments. Matt, it looks more that you are assessing portfolios that already exist. So can you explain a bit more about that and how you sit within in Savills?
Yeah, so we my team, to portfolio valuations, made up of 15 of us, but we sit within the wider valuation division. We're based in Margaret Street, same as Hebe, and you know, in terms of our reach and what we do on a daily basis, we interlink and work with our regional colleagues. So as I mentioned earlier, the portfolios are across the UK. So we'll liaise with our colleagues in Manchester, Birmingham, Leeds, and I suppose we sit within that division with I think 400 registered valuers. So our day to day is we'll look at a makeup which is multi-asset, multi-sector, and we'll look at, you know, traditional retail, office, industrial, and that's sort of our bread and butter, and that's what we do as a team. But we also, I suppose, with the movement from our clients into the alternative sectors, so looking at hotels, care homes, that sort of side, we have various specialist teams, both in the Margaret Street office in London, but also nationally. So we act as a sort of conduit between those specialist teams and our clients. So they feed into us values, views on the market, comparables, that sort of side. And we then on a quarterly basis predominantly will meet with our clients to discuss market movements, you know, what's happened in terms of values, tenancy changes, looking at rents, you know, where they're going to, and also yields at the moment. With what's sort of happened over the last 12 months with the pandemic, you know, a lot of yields have moved out on the basis of uncertainty with tenant covenants and that sort of side. So we really, as a team, sort of paint that picture for the whole portfolio in terms of what's happening, what we're seeing on the ground, you know, investments that are actually transacting. And I suppose where we're slightly different from the rest of the valuation division, which is more bank-led, theirs is a snapshot in time. So they're very much defined by the valuation data and when they do it, whereas we are continually monitoring the market and feeding in on asset management initiatives that our clients may be looking to do and improvements, or, you know, unfortunately at the moment, backward movement on valuations where, you know, things aren't going the right way. We have to deliver positive and negative news, and it's more on a, you know, a daily basis rather than that one point in time, which is very much the secured lending side.
Okay, and how did you get into your graduate role? So obviously because you've come through a graduate scheme. Could you tell me more about that? And did you do different things and then decide on doing the valuation? How did that work?
Yeah, I've had an interesting route. So as I mentioned, I came in on a 4-month placement. I actually got the news the week before Christmas in 2009, probably my best Christmas present to date. So I joined in January 10, did 4 months in the retail lease consultancy team, and then moved, was put onto the graduate scheme permanently in the May. In terms of the rotation system, we do, so it's 2 years with 4-month placements, but there is the option to do doubles, and I did 2 double rotations. So I started off with 8 months in commercial valuation. Then I did high street agency, followed by 8 months in high street investment, and then I ended up doing shopping centre management. Sort of as you go through the process, and the way I sort of explain it to graduates is it's almost like a continuous job interview, because ultimately it's teams seeing whether they can work with you and whether you can work with them, and whether there's a position at the end of the the end of the rotations. Following that and qualifying in May 12, I was taken on by the High Street investment team. And then I worked with them for 3.5 years. And then the reason for the move from there, and I suppose it just shows there are opportunities to move internally at Savills. I moved to the Portfolio Vals team in November 15. Primarily, it was with a view to gaining exposure and experience in all sectors, because high street investment was quite a niche area of the market, with a view to doing that for a couple of years and then, hopefully moving client side. But I'm here 5 years on, absolutely loving it, and work with a great team. And it's, I think it's, the test that I'm still here is to the team and the work that we do.
Great, brilliant. So Hebe, can you tell us a bit more about graduate recruitment and the process that people have to go through to graduate recruitment first?
Yeah, so it is quite a lengthy process. It generally takes sort of from beginning of application to joining the business about a year. So we tend to open our applications in sort of September time with a view to start the next September. So we do a screening process. So depending on which team you apply for, if you applied for, building and project consultancy, they might go to Adam's team. If you're applying to Southampton, if you're going to planning, they might be screened by Bryony. And if you're looking to do the London commercial rotation, which is what Matt did, Matt might screen them along with sort of 40 other individuals who'd be screening lots of different CVs and cover letters. And then if you're successful at that stage, you'd go through to sort of an assessment centre, which is sort of a full day, usually in person, but this year we did them on Zoom, which was really interesting. And then final stage would be a panel interview. So 3 normally sort of associate directors or directors from within the business would interview each candidate, and then our offers generally go out in the end of January or February time. So now we've basically hired all of our graduates to start this September. So it's quite nice for them, because if they're all in their final years or doing their masters, but they're relaxed knowing that they have a job at the end of it. So yeah, it's kind of that type of process. But as I say, so we do also take on graduates who haven't got an accredited degree. So for planning, they haven't got an RTPI accredited degree, and for surveying, they haven't got an RICS accredited degree. So what they'll do is they'll join the business in September and they'll enroll onto a distance learning masters. So similar to what Adam's doing, he's doing a distance learning apprenticeship, but they'll do it just for a master's. So they'll do it for 2 years instead of Adam's doing his for the 5 years. But actually, effectively, if you've done an undergrad and then you're doing a master's, it's still 5 years until you pass your APC. So it's the same for Adam, but luckily for him, he hasn't had to pay for his undergrad degree, and he won't have any debt and things like that. So that is sort of one route, and then there's the other graduate route as well. So yeah.
So I've got 2 questions. The first is just what areas, are there too many to list, or what areas would graduates look to go into? What are the kind of main key areas? You've talked about planning and
Yeah, main key areas would be so surveying, which would encompass lots of different areas. So that would be valuation, and it would take in sort of operational capital markets, capital allowances, loads of different specific teams like property management and various different things. Building surveying, which Adam's doing, planning, urban design, forestry, food and farming, rural. So those are sort of all of our main different areas kind of within the business. But then again, you could rotate around different teams, or you could just go directly into one team and stay there for the whole time.
And the other question is, and you or Adam can answer this, what the non-graduate routes, it would you just be more interesting to understand for people, the routes that you can get in without having out being a graduate?
Yeah, so potentially if you're applying for an apprentice role, you might be applying in your last year of school, and then when you leave school you join the business, and at that point you'd become enrolled on doing a degree apprenticeship. So you, for the first sort of 3.5 years of your employment, not only would you be doing your day-to-day work, but 20% of the time off your job, you'd be doing learning towards your apprenticeship. So you're studying, and then in that last sort of 2 years, so the last 3.5 and the 2 years sort of overlap a tiny bit, you would also be completing your APC, which is the qualification you need in order to become chartered. So effectively, it's a 5-year training program, and at the end of that, you'd stay within your specific team, but you would be either a chartered surveyor or a chartered planner. So timing wise, for our graduates to become chartered and for our apprentices to become chartered, it's the same amount of time, because the graduates would have gone away for a 3-year degree and then done the 2-year APC as well.
And how does that differ to your kind of high street shops then, and routes into market there?
Yeah, so most of our sort of high street shops, and probably how most of you would recognise or think of Savills, is more of a residential side, so our estate agency side. So that's the lettings and sales of residential property. But we all work within sort of multi-use offices, and more commercial teams. So as we've explained, it would be bigger scale. Effectively, I don't know if any of you want to jump in there.
Yeah, I'd just say with the, as Hebe sort of said there, the residential arm's probably what we're most known for, and I think my mum still thought I sold houses. But I think within the other offices, sort of regionally, the move is, and actually the disciplines that we cover are more commercial based. So that's focusing on the major sectors, retail, office, industrial, and obviously more of a focus on the alternatives now. So the full spectrum really, and that's, I suppose that harks from where before we moved to Margaret Street in London, for example, we had 2 offices. So in Mayfair, we had Grosvenor Hill, and then we also had Lansdowne House, which had the commercial arm, and then land and planning. And then we moved to Margaret Street in 2013 to basically create a HQ, which had everyone under one roof. So we have country homes, as I say, energy, sustainability, all of the arms, both on the residential and commercial side, under one roof. And then we obviously liaise on a regular basis with the regional offices that sort of Adam and Bryony work in as well.
I'd be really interested to hear a bit about sustainability, because I think that a lot of people that are coming into the market now are looking for a business for good and sustainable and R&D kind of areas. Can you tell me a bit more about what Savills does on the kind of sustainability front?
Yeah, I'm happy to pick this one up. So we have a team which is sort of headed by Jonathan Hale and Tanya Broadfield that I sort of deal with on a regular basis. So I suppose from a commercial perspective, a lot of our clients are now focusing on the green attributes of buildings. So it's looking at how we can get the most efficient rating. And this is partly driven by the fact that tenants, are now more are conscious of the environment and where they work, and they want to have green credentials. So basically my role and sort of the conduit with the client is introducing them to sustainability teams to talk about ESG, that net zero strategy, and making sure that any buildings development wise are built to those sort of specifications. So we try and get the sustainability team in early so they can advise on, what they need to do in terms of get that BREEAM excellent rating and that sort of side. And that's probably the front end, in terms of before the building's built. And I'm more at the other end, which is the valuation when it's up and done. But in terms of what we're seeing and what we'll see over the next couple of years, I think in terms of the impact on valuations is just looking at, the greener the building, the more attractive it is, or more attractive it will be to investors, because they're more conscious of that and their sort of corporate social responsibility to ensure that they're buying and investing in the right buildings. So it's at the forefront of investors' agendas at the moment. And I suppose Adam and Bryony can sort of delve on that bit as well in terms of where they are on the development side and how important it is there.
Yeah, certainly. Of course, sustainability is one of the key agendas throughout the planning system and a key driver. And what we're finding is that all local authorities are really putting it at the forefront of their planning policy making. At the moment, there are various subsectors, I suppose, of sustainability, but ultimately it is one of the the key considerations that needs to be applied to all development. And really, when you're looking at it from a planning perspective, from that very early stage of considering whether land is suitable for development, sustainability means where is the site located? Can it provide both sustainable infrastructure in terms of being linked to good transport networks, providing homes, but can it also provide sustainability in terms of green infrastructure as well? And green infrastructure is very, very high up on the agenda. We have the Environment Bill, which is being considered in Parliament and should be ratified within the next year. It's been delayed slightly for various reasons, but we are expecting it to come forward. And what that means is we have to start considering biodiversity net gain on development sites. We have to consider development sites being nitrate neutral and phosphate neutral, which is quite a technical side of environmental planning as well, which we're all getting to grips with at the moment. And in terms of what we're doing in Savills to be able to advise our client on that, we have started a series of working groups. We now have a nitrates working group, which I'm in, a biodiversity net gain working group, which is linked with development, our rural teams and our planning teams, so that we can really get an understanding of the topics, the issues, how it affects the development sites, how it affects our business, and how it, most importantly, how it affects our clients and how we can advise them. So sustainability definitely influences our job on a day-to-day basis and provides us with lots of opportunity actually in terms of our work streams as well.
Yeah, interesting. Adam, have you got anything to add to that?
Yeah, no, I think just touching on and moving on from what Bryony does, they put in processes for developments to have to be built to a certain standard to ensure, head towards that net carbon zero, keep bad emissions down, stop the idea of global warming essentially. So, Matt also touched on it, the fact that there's a BREEAM Excellent award, and that varies on a scale depending on how sustainable the development is. So if the planning application's in and there's a requirement for it to be a BREEAM Excellent or an Outstanding even, then it's our job to then jump in and ensure that all the products that we're specifying meet all the requirements of that. So we're looking at solar panels on roofing, battery powered, car charging ports. That's the sort of stuff that we're looking towards, and it's our job to sort of research which products are the best and the most sustainable, and deliver them for the client as well.
Brilliant. Good. Now, Hebe, you talked a bit about how this graduate recruitment process worked, and that once you get all the people applying in September, that then the applications go out to like Bryony and Matt's and Adam's teams to assess. So it'd be really interesting to hear from Bryony, Matt, and Adam and you, Hebe, to look at what you're looking for in the kind of applications that you are receiving. So I'll go to Matt first, as you were the last person to speak on this.
So I suppose when I'm looking at it, I suppose everyone's slightly different in terms of what they look for. For me, it's seeing, I suppose a lot of the candidates, academically are very strong and very similar. So for me, it's looking more at that extracurricular side, looking at the level of work experience they've had within property, but also outside. I suppose you don't want to pigeonhole and go, well, they've got a couple of years experience, and that's fantastic. You want to know about the wider picture, what they're involved in terms of sporting teams, that sort of side, any charity work, that sort of thing, just to try and see that they're maybe a rounded individual in terms of what they've done, and their experience is quite broad. So that's definitely something that I look out for when I'm going through CVs.
That's really useful. So more than just academia, it's all the full gambit kind of thing. And Bryony, what about you?
Yeah, I'd agree with everything that Matt said. I think also for me, it's really about understanding how people's verbal communication skills, sort of how they come across. In planning, we do have to speak to clients regularly. We do have to present at planning committees. So it's about understanding that they've got an element of confidence, I suppose, that they would be able to do that as well. But yeah, really understanding them as a person, what drives them, and understanding that they do have a real passion, I suppose, for the subject, and it is something that they really want to work in and see themselves as having a career in, essentially.
And Adam, I mean, I know you are as an apprenticeship, but do you think there's anything else that your team would be looking at different to that? or anything that struck you?
Yeah, no, I'd probably just echo what Bryony and Matt were saying there. I think the reason why, I was successful in getting onto my apprenticeship was the fact that I had real life experience. And that was one of the key factors that Matt just touched on there. I managed to sort of let my passion for construction shine through in the way I was interviewed and the way I applied. So, yeah, and I think the communication side of it as well. We also have to speak to a lot of people, whether it be clients, contractors, different colleagues. So I think communication's key. I think it's just sort of like a good attitude towards working and learning, because it's just an ongoing process of day-to-day learning, and just being outgoing and productive with it.
Can I just add one thing to that actually as well, in that absolutely I think work experience is a really good asset to have when you're applying for these positions. But one thing we really noticed this year, because of the pandemic situation, is that it was very difficult for people to have any real life work experience. So what then really stood out in the applications was people where people had made an effort to perhaps do some online learning that was extracurricular, or make virtual contact with some planning departments or similar. So people that had looked for an alternative way to gain some opportunities or gain some understanding about the planning system or similar, in order to just boost their application.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that point as well. We had lots of applicants who said, had planned to have work experience at X firm, but due to coronavirus was unable to do this. So instead, I, read up on lots of their research. Like, we produce research daily. We've got amazing research teams. So the fact that they knew that and that they'd read into that was really interesting. And then also, as you go down towards the process, towards the end, being able to talk about that is great. So I think, I definitely agree with that, Bryony.
Good, because as you know, as a charity, what the Talent Tap do is try and support people to gain work experience in companies like yourselves, and people that might find it harder just through not knowing somebody, not being in the building trade like you have started, or Matt knowing somebody, or you're someone's dad that you worked with. So that's why we're here. So it's really great when people do get the work experience, and obviously and people can obviously apply to the Talent Tap to try and achieve that, or to Savills, I know, do things direct as well. And so it's great to know that what you're saying is to get ahead, showing that you've been proactive. So my next question is, any other things that people can be doing? And I'm good to hear for everyone here about how they can get ahead.
I think trying to attend as many events and things as possible as well. Lots of firms put on sort of Zoominars or webinars like this, and just checking websites and things like that, and signing up to various different things, or going to careers fair at school or anything like that, just to learn about lots of different opportunities, is definitely one of the top things that I would say and that I would advise. And also researching into the different companies, because I think that can make a massive difference when you look at an application and that they've just applied to 50 different places because they haven't actually said anything about the business or what attracted them towards you over maybe a competitor who's actually has a completely different culture or does something completely different to us. So I think that putting in a bit of time there can definitely make a difference. And it's also a decision from your side as well as ours. You need to know if you want to work at that company as well.
So been making sure that every application is unique to the company and have done the research. And also, if you are going, because somebody could have watched this Zoominar and hopefully will learn a lot more about the industry. So how can they, in an application, show that they've done that? It's not like they can say, oh, I did a week's work experience or a virtual thing. Would they say, well, I've watched this webinar and I've done this? How could they show that in their application?
Yeah, I think you could reference it on your CV, literally just a one-liner. But also, if you're asked to do a cover letter, I would usually suggest you speak about your interest in a specific industry for about a third, your interest in the business for about a third, and then why you think you'd be suited for a role. So maybe you're around your interest in the industry, you'd say, when I attended X Zoominar or Y event, it really sparked an interest in this because, and you can build on it in that sense.
Sorry, I was just going to say, I suppose the other thing as well, and the range in terms of ages here that are listening to the webinar, is the one thing I found from applying in 08, 09 is just perseverance. I suppose it's just keeping on it. If it's a career that you want to go into, start applying early. Trying to get as much work experience under your belt as you can, and that does show in itself dedication and a passion towards working in property. So yeah, don't be downhearted if you get knocked back. Just get up, try again, and keep applying, because the opportunities are there, and I think it's important to get that across.
I would also say don't be too nervous about contacting people directly within businesses via LinkedIn or sort of similar platforms. I appreciate it could perhaps seem quite daunting to contact a director in a large company with lots of experience, but often if you contact them directly, your name's in their mind, and then they see your application, and they know that you've been making an effort and you've been seeking contact and are really keen to gain that work experience as well. So there are opportunities through social media platforms now to do that without sort of coming across as though you're perhaps being too direct. So yeah, use that as an opportunity as well.
Good. And I think what the great thing is about the companies like Savills is that it's not so London centric. There are opportunities, obviously regional opportunities. So if you're wanting to get work experience, people in the south, then they don't have to come to London, not be able to find accommodation. They could be coming to you in your Southampton office or any of your regional offices, which is a real benefit. Would you say, Hebe?
Definitely. There are so many. I think there's over 100 offices in the UK, so there's a lot of different areas that you could go to. And applying to local offices, on our website we have a contact us page, and you can kind of whittle down locations as well if you wanted to speak to someone who was local to you, and then it will bring up all the names and all their different departments and things for contact details. So yeah,
the only thing I would add to that as well, and my experience from working with regional colleagues as well, is they probably get more exposure and more experience than maybe some of the graduates in London, for example. And I found that some of the best graduates and the best performers within the company are from our regional offices, because both London and the regions, you do get involved from sort of day one in various projects. But I think, in Southampton, Birmingham, other areas, you get probably a bit more involved than maybe you would in London. So yeah, if you are looking, then do look at the regional offices as well.
I agree, and they're also much less competitive in sometimes. And actually, I agree with Matt that it's shown, because the grads in London rotate in order to get enough experience for the APC, whereas the grads in the regions don't need to, because actually they're exposed to a lot more and a lot broader range because they're not so specialist. Whereas in London, if they're only doing one specific thing, then obviously you're probably gaining slightly less experience in that sense. So yeah, definitely agree with that.
So I'm just going to, I will open up the floor to questions. So everybody's listening, if you do have any questions for our panelists, please write them in the chat now. But I've got one more question to each of you. And I want to ask you, what do you think is the best part of your role? So what bit of your roles do you like the most and gives you the most satisfaction? I'll start with you, Bryony.
I love being a planner. I always have done, if I'm completely honest. And I think the bit that gives me the most satisfaction is getting to influence design and layout of schemes. So the part of my job that I enjoy the most is what we call the development management side of planning. So the detailed design and layout stage. And I love having meetings with my clients and architects and seeing some of my ideas incorporated into those proposals. And then eventually you see that those ideas and suggestions have been built out, and it's fantastic. It's great feeling.
What about you, Matt?
It's quite a tricky one. I suppose the variety of work and how it's so different on a sort of day-to-day basis. But I think being seen as that sort of trusted advisor to, particularly maybe your smaller clients. So if they're looking to acquire something and they ask you for a review in terms of where do you think they should be paying for what they should be paying to buy it. Sometimes weirdly, it's when they decide not to proceed with something on the basis of your advice, just shows how much they value your opinion and your view, and that's extremely rewarding, I'd say.
Brilliant. And what about you, Adam?
Yeah, so I think where I'm still learning, there's a few things that I really do enjoy, but there's also stuff that I haven't done yet, which I might like in future. But as a sort of what I've done so far, I would say just being involved in a range of different projects and buildings, a lot of which are really, really interesting from a historical point of view, actually, getting to learn about how it was built 400 years ago and, you know, the methods of construction back then compared to what it is now. Working with clients on projects, trying to deliver a building project for them, meeting all of their needs and then handing it over to them at the end, and having that sort of tangible finished product that they're really happy with. So yeah, no, and also I think networking as well, the fact that we've got such a strong graduate and apprenticeship scheme, it means that there's so many opportunities for me to jump in for social events or further learning and that sort of thing. So yeah, I think that about sums it up.
Thank you, that's great. And
Right,
you've got a cat there in the corner. And Hebe, what about you?
I think for me, it's definitely the people. I feel so lucky in my role that I'm literally work with all the different teams within the business, which I love. So I'm speaking to so many different people, and then also students. So students across sort of all age groups and our internship programs and everything like that, and different stages of their career. Lots of people join us as a second career as well, and then still go through the graduate scheme, and also kind of all different levels of the business. So no 2 days are the same, definitely. I love the variation.
Well, I've got one question here from Finlay. In terms of looking at a career in property development, what would be the best degree to get a rounded knowledge? What would the Savills development team look for specifically? I'm 17, so looking to do an undergrad next year or the year after.
I don't know a huge amount about property development degrees, but I believe that the majority of those people in our development team they're chartered surveyors. So it's a degree that allows you to be a chartered surveyor. And I believe the titles of the degree are property development. That's my understanding, or property management. I'm not sure if anybody else knows what the exact names of the degrees would be, but it is a degree that allows you to be a surveyor. So then one of the tricky things is the universities do have different titles for differing degrees, but they may be sort of one and the same in terms of the modules that you're completing. So it may be a degree in surveying, for example, or a degree in property management or property development.
Yeah, I would just add to that. I mean, I did a master's in real estate management, and they offer the same courses at undergraduate level, which basically I think give you more of a rounded view of property as a sector. So it will give you modules in valuation, real estate law, the development side, strategic investment. So for me, I would recommend looking at maybe a general route, so it covers all aspects. So you're not sort of pigeoning yourself into just development as a potential career. It's you're there and you're selling yourself best, I'd say, in terms of having surveying knowledge across the board. And I know in terms of universities, undergrad wise, I went to University of West England, so I'm a little bit biased, but there's UE, Oxford Brookes, Reading, Cambridge, Nottingham Trent, Sheffield Hallam. So all of these offer these courses. But I suppose if you've got any queries on that, maybe speak to careers advisors, or feel free to I think probably speak to Hebe. I suppose that's where we have most contact.
So I think it's also just important to make sure that the courses you're on are accredited courses for the surveying routes and the professional accreditation.
Yeah, I'd say if you search up Finlay RICS accredited degrees, undergraduate degrees, and you'll see sort of a huge range. There are so many different universities offering them now, and places like Westminster's, honestly, hundreds of different courses. I would say most of our graduates probably would study a straight real estate course if they were then going to go into development. So as Matt says, it would cover sort of all different aspects first before you went into that, and that would be for a surveying route, so which development we're kind of under.
Thank you, that's really helpful. Are there any more questions? We have come to the end of our hour, and it has been really insightful and fascinating, everything that you guys have shared with us, and it's so helpful. And thank you, Hebe, for putting together such a panel with so many diverse talents on the panel. It's really brilliant. This webinar will be available online, so the people who are watching, if you have any friends or colleagues who are interested, please log on to our website. into the seminar section. Hebe will also be taking it and using it as well with some of the graduate stuff that she does. So thank you again, everybody from Savills. That was really insightful, and yeah, I hope that everyone can gain a lot from it. So thank you.
As just one last thing, Naomi, sorry to keep you. I spoke to our apprenticeship coordinator at Savills, and she just encouraged anyone who's got an interest in apprenticeships to go and follow our Instagrad page. So it's called Savills Instagrad. Go and follow us on there, and it comes up with any opportunities that are coming up in the regions or in the London offices. And I believe our intake applications are open from the 8th of March. So yeah, keep your eyes peeled, everyone.
Fantastic. 8th of March.
8th
Brilliant.
of March.
Yes, Monday.
Thank you, everybody. Great. Have a good rest of the day. Thank you for everyone for listening.
Thank you all.
very much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Bye. Cheers.